You can see I am still in sunny Florida. Well, I shouldn't say sunny Florida because actually we just are encountering some storms here. It has been 92 every day. I say that just to make everybody in Rochester feel bad because you guys are doing like 40 degrees. So um, no whiskey today, only wine. But this is that 19 Crimes wine, the Australian wine, which is actually very, very good. So that is going to be my wine of the night, as opposed to the whiskey of the night. So having said that, just a couple of quick announcements. Because of our having to, when President and I return to Rochester, we're going to be mandated to be in quarantine. And unfortunately, due to some conflicts in schedule, I was not able to find a replacement or substitute priest for this Sunday. So there's an email that's going to be going out to everybody. And so I talked with the parish council, and we're going to have to then close church down for this Sunday. However, we will be broadcasting a liturgy. We will update it with Sunday's gospel and Sunday's epistle reading. And we've got a great virtual Sunday school that I certainly want you all to see. Holy Spirit will be having services as regular, so you can go there if you want. And I believe that for next Sunday, I've got somebody arranged, so we should be set for that. But in these times, it's unfortunate that we're going to Florida, so that mandates our quarantine. But that does not mean that I won't be on for the Tuesday show for our Tuesday Bible studies, the Gospel of St. Mark, and we'll certainly be back Thursday again for a continuing show. All right. Demos, do we have any questions, or do I need to make my opening speech?
Well, we're always open to hear an opening speech. We do have a question in already and I'm having a Marissa moment because for some reason, poor Tamer, he's always giving us questions, and I'm always forgetting how to pronounce his name. Apologies. Is it Tamer? Tamer. There we go.
Tamer.
Hi, Father. Last week, I started the process of entering into the seminary to become a deacon. It is a 4-year program, as you know. If all works well, I start in May of 2021. Can you keep me in your prayers?
Oh man, congratulations, Tamer. That is wonderful, and God's grace upon you for that, and God's blessing. I think that as frustrating as that can be sometimes, it is absolutely the best time that I've had in my life and that I am having in my life. The people that I have met, 99.9% of them are the absolute best people. You get to be intimately involved with people's lives. You get to share their joys. You get to share their pains. They will. The vast majority will bend over backwards to help you and to help the church do what she needs to do. So, congratulations! I know that I'm very confident that you're going to enjoy this new journey. And heaven forbid that we should call it a profession. It's much, much higher than that. It's a calling by all rights. So congratulations.
Do you have any advice based on your experiences in seminary?
Well, okay. So Tam, are you married? My advice is going to switch based on whether you're single or you're married. So if you respond back.
Well, how would it go either way?
Well, when you are a single priest, there's much more of an ability to devote yourself to the calling and to the needs of your parishioners. When you are married, you have to remember that you're married first. Our bishop is one of the bishops who recognizes that fact very, very clearly, and in fact, our bishop requires that the spouse must say to him that she accepts her husband's entry into the priesthood. So, because he understands that if not carefully managed, it can unfortunately lead to frustration, lead to conflict, and ultimately, unfortunately, in many cases, lead to divorce.
He is single.
He is single, and apparently, then he will remain single because you have to make your decision before you enter into the priesthood. So my advice there is going to be my top piece of advice is make 100% sure that you have an outside interest. Unfortunately, I've seen the case of many older priests who have no other life other than the church. So what ends up happening many times is that when they retire, there's an inability then to have purpose, because every priest at some point has to move on, right? I mean, you're going to retire and then you have to move on. And many times, unfortunately, I see that they don't have now something else to do, and they don't have anything to release their stress. So, parishioners can be demanding, just like any job. I mean, so you have to make sure that you have an outside interest. Yeah, but if you're going to be a deacon, you're probably going to be a priest. If it's GOA, you're going to become a priest. I was a deacon for 3 days, so if you're going Antiochian, maybe you're going to stay a deacon, but most people, deacon is the quick road, and especially if you're single, Tamara, you're going to be a priest very, very shortly.
I do have a random question. Now, of course, we understand why a priest, once he is ordained as a priest, why the marriage at that point is an issue because of a conflict of interest. But within those 4 years, do you have an opportunity to meet and get wed, or once you enter the program?
Yes, not until you are ordained in whatever in deacon, you'll start as deacon. Until the moment that you're ordained, you absolutely have the ability to meet somebody and to get married. And again, I would consider that very, very, very carefully in terms of, are you prepared for the celibate life?
We have a question from Medieval Guitar. Gotta love that name.
Gotta love that name.
Good evening, Father. In the mealtime prayer, quote, "Bless the food and drink of your servants, for you are holy," end quote. Could you unpack the connection between blessing and holiness?
Okay, so give me the prayer one more time then, just so that I...
Bless the food and drink of your servants, for you are holy.
Eating is at the fundamental core, and sharing a meal is at the fundamental core of who we are as people. And in fact, it is so central and so important to us that God used the mealtime, the Seder, to remember the great events of what happened to the Jewish people. Jesus Christ used meals as now his central point for his anamnesis, or his remembrance. So what is central to us as human beings is to share a meal together. And in fact, in Acts, it's very, very clear, and it says that on a daily basis, the apostles gathered together to break bread. And so there is a holiness that is attached to eating because it has been a central concept within who we are as people, for honoring and remembering what it is that God has done for us. Because remember, it is this wonderful symbiosis, is that God provides the elements. We take those elements and we transform them into something, and then we offer them back to God, who then sanctifies them and makes them holy. That's why that Orthodox, once we are done with the anamnesis, take, eat, this is my body, and we say, thine gifts of thine own gifts we offer to you in all and for all. That's a wonderful saying, because what it says is you have given me the gifts of seeds and earth and water, and I have taken that as a human being, as your creation, and transformed it into bread or wine, and wine. And then I am offering that back to you at your altar and asking that you sanctify this. And that's what's happening in that prayer, is that food is a blessed act. And by recognizing that is made through a holy process, we remember that you, O God, who are holy, have provided us these things. It's a symbiosis. It's not God does everything because there's something we do. And it's not just us because God has to do something too. But it's a wonderful symbiosis.
In the style of medieval guitar, Marvin Diner comes in to ask your opinion on another quote. The quote is, "Keep your mind in hell and do not despair," end quote, from Saint Silouan the Anthonite. I hope I pronounced that correctly. What is meant by this quote said by Jesus Christ to the holy Anthonite saints? So, keep your mind.
I don't recall, and my Terry, the researcher, is looking that up. I do not recall Jesus saying, "Keep your mind in hell." So I don't know if that's necessarily a quote by Jesus. I may be wrong, but certainly I've heard something very similar to that from the fathers, and this idea again that as we say as the priest says when the cup comes out, what is the first thing that he says? With the fear of God. He doesn't say with the love of God or with faith approach. He starts off and says, "Metaphovu theu," with the fear of God. Now, not a childish fear, like, I'm afraid of the dark, or I'm afraid of ghosts. We're not talking about that kind of childish fear. We're talking about and to respect the awesomeness of who God is, and that there is judgment associated with our actions. That judgment, and as we say in the funeral in the funeral gospel, where Jesus does say, "And those who have done good to the resurrection of life, and those who have done evil to the resurrection of judgment." And so in that we say, remember now that it is not just about, the beauty of heaven, but there are also then consequences.
Medieval Guitar jumps in to say, "Thank you, Father. Profound way to look at a simple meal." But, at the same time, for Greeks, there is no such thing as a simple meal.
Of course, there's no, absolutely not. And the meal, just like heaven, is unending, right? Because the minute you finish your plate, Yaya's putting something else on your plate, right? So it's an unending meal. So you're getting a taste of heaven by eating a Greek meal.
That's an even better and more profound way to look at it.
Oh, yes. And Terry said, and the difference is that in heaven, you won't put any weight on.
And, there we go. Hey, now that is one very positive way to look at it. Marvin says, "Evharisto, Patera." And we got a question in a couple weeks ago on the "Can you get sick from Holy Communion" video that I thought would be interesting to take a look at right now. Specifically, I would not take communion in an Eastern Rite church, Orthodox or Catholic, especially in these times. Anyhow, didn't the Lord say, "Take and eat, take and drink," not "take and dunk"? What is your thought on this statement?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is during the schism, obviously the East and the West were at odds with one another, and there were some battles going on. And the cardinal that was sent by the Pope to issue the bull of excommunication was Cardinal Humbert, I believe. And when the patriarch, and I can't remember the Orthodox patriarch of the time, But when he came back and he said to the Catholic, not contingency or council, that that the what do they call that? The emissaries that came, and he got on their case about the unleavened bread and their attachment to unleavened bread, and the Ozimites, so those who practice the unleavened practice. Well, Cardinal Humbert came back and he says, I don't recall Jesus saying, take, eat off the spoon. So, so even he made this comment to the Orthodox. So there was a little bit of banter going on there. You're right. And our Archbishop is very grounded in this. He was always clear, as all the bishops, to include the Ecumenical Patriarch, are clear that the communion itself cannot affect you. It is that which is of God. It is sanctified. It cannot harm you. But the Archbishop did say that the mechanism of transmission, which in this case is the spoon, has that potential. All right, and that certainly then opened up the floodgates. All right, and so we have to be cognizant of what it is that we do and the practices that we use. Unfortunately, this has been used by some ultra-Orthodox as a weapon of pride for those whose faith is not that strong, that they accuse them now of being faithless. And Bishop John Zizioulas of Pergamon states that we have, just as St. Paul says, we have an obligation to not be a stumbling block to our brother and to help those build up their faith. And so there are parishioners, just like I have parishioners, that are unwilling to receive communion at this time through any mechanism. And we have to be respectful of that until now. Historically, we have had times where communion has been refused. So we've had to shut it down for reasons under occupation, where we weren't allowed to celebrate. We've had it for reasons of health reasons in certain pandemics that we've had in the past. So this is not anything that is new to the Orthodox Church. Our history is long enough that we have endured this. And so as our Archbishop, I don't want to make this about I'm better than you because I'm putting my faith to the test. Because actually that's antithetical to God, because the Psalms clearly say, do not test the Lord thy God. And by boasting and saying, look at me, I'm receiving communion off of a spoon, is not only detrimental to yourself in terms of pride, but it is detrimental to those other people now whose faith is not quite as strong, and there is a certain amount of fear in there, and we become then a stumbling block to the building up of their faith.
I don't remember a picture of the spoon on Leonardo's Last Supper, but I'll take another glance on it.
Yeah, make sure. I think there may have been a spoon, but because Jesus learned everything in the Orient, actually there is chopsticks there too. So make sure you look at that.
That'd be great. Aaron says, "Hello, Father. My question is, what is the Church's view on the little glass mati, the evil eye? I know it's frowned upon, yet see many with it. Is it harmless or should be avoided?" I should point out we actually have a video about the evil eye.
We do have a good video about the mati, about the evil eye. This is okay. This is a little complicated. Now, number one, superstition is not a Christian value, but Greeks, like many other cultures, are very superstitious. All right, and so a lot of times, we let that get in the way of our Christianity. And we inherit this from our parents or from our grandparents, and we have to recognize it for what it is, and it's just superstition. Having said that, there is a prayer in the Orthodox clergy priest handbook for the removal of the Vaskania, or the evil eye. Okay, so there's a little dichotomy here, because on one hand we say don't be superstitious, but on the other hand we actually have then a prayer. But when we take a closer look at that, the prayer is more about the release of that person from the effect of those evil forces. We do not believe that somebody has the witch or warlock power to impose a curse on you. We do not believe in that. But we do believe that if you believe that you can be cursed and you allow that to happen, everything happens through your will. If you will it, then the demons can enter. And then those demons are real and they need to be exorcised. So we don't believe in this idea that somebody comes around and throws an evil eye, but creates an atmosphere where you now are susceptible to that demonic activity, which we clearly believe then can happen. So I guess where I struggle is a lot of times, very Greek families will, at the baptism, will bring the little buboniera, or the little gift that they pin on your shirt, and they'll have a cross and a mati at the same time. And this is in conflict with what Christianity is, because one is superstition, and then one is obviously the cross of salvation. So, there's no harm in wearing the mati as just a piece of jewelry. But when we combine it with the cross, then we are sending a message of mixed superstition with salvation.
No, the only evil eye I'm concerned about is Sauron from Lord of the Rings, but I think that might be a different interpretation. Marissa B.P. Adams. Sounds a little bit familiar.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah. Hello.
Could it be a cat-related question?
I don't know. I don't think so. Actually, it is an animal-related question. Hi, Father A. How are you? Well, let's take care of that question first. How are you?
Okay, all right, man. No, actually, we're doing good. I mean, I can't say that this has been a fun trip, but it is. It's always nice. It's always nice to be with your parents. It's wonderful to be here to enjoy Terry's mom. It's wonderful for me to be here with my mom and dad. Again, make sure that for those of you who have aging parents, that you take every opportunity to be with them, because those moments will be gone before you know it. So I'm very, very, I thank God that we are able to have this time with our parents. So I'm doing good.
So Marissa's question is, can you explain the reasoning behind the double-headed eagle as the mascot of Orthodoxy, or its history? Speaking of mascots, is there a color that represents us? So two-part question.
Normally, I think the colors that represent us are the orange, the yellow and the white. The Byzantine eagle, yellow with the white background, and that Byzantine eagle, the two-headed eagle, is not. We're not the only ones to use that. There are other countries that have used that, and what it represents is this unity, or this universality, or this symphonia, if I could use that word also, of the fact that the Byzantine Empire covers such a vast region. It just like the Roman, like we would say that at the time the British, the sun did not set on the British Empire, meaning that it was so large. The same thing for the Byzantine Empire is that regardless of which way you looked, east or west, that was then the Byzantine Empire. So there was this idea of this universality, this symphonia of now the Byzantine Empire connecting then the world, and the connection then of the church and the state. A little bit antithetical to our American ideals, but remember our conversation that we had, and that video that we just had about the bishop's throne, is that there was always the guardian of the church, which was the emperor, and the guardian of the faith, which was the bishop. And that those two worked not only together in symphonia, but they also worked in tension, because it was only the patriarch who could then call out the emperor. The emperor's subjects were certainly not going to call him out. So it's this idea of this connection between the church and the state and the universality of the Byzantine Empire, covering both east and west.
Marissa has a statement. She says, "Leave our Mattia alone." Well, all you have to do is just turn around in circles and yell garlic 3 times, and then you're fine.
That's right. Well, there we go, right? Or wear it around your neck. So all I'm saying is just don't put the two together on your chain. Don't put the cross and the mati together on your chain. That was what I'm saying. I've seen some very, very beautiful stone jewelry with the mati on it. It looks very, very beautiful. But let's just take it for what it is and not attach now a power to it that it does not have.
I would like to welcome Faith Thorne back into the chat. He or she always makes the chat look very colorful with all the emojis. Welcome.
Ooh.
Kristen 11 says, "Hello, Father. I was wondering, is there any certain way a woman should dress being Orthodox?" Which is something else we touched upon in another video about proper etiquette in church.
So, and again, here the church supports equality. The same thing that I would say for a man, I'm going to say for a woman. Dress respectably in the house of the Lord, okay? So what that means is that men or women should not dress in a provocative manner that takes away from now the worship of the church. Can women wear pants in church in America? Yes, they can. I'm not going to speak for other countries, but in America, it took me a while, but my mom now, she wears pants in church, okay? There's nothing wrong with that, all right? Some women cover their head, some women do not. Doesn't matter, all right? But, and some women, if they come into church with a shaved head, that's fine too. But if you're going to now shave something in your head that is disrespectful, like a curse word or a Nazi emblem or some kind of hateful thing, then we're going to call you out for that. So Terry's asking if she should shave her head. Demos, what do you think?
Anything I would say would incriminate me. So
we're gonna say no on that.
Yes.
So, a respectful dress is what is appropriate. Do men have to wear ties? They used to, but now they can go business casual. I would not want a man to come to my service wearing now a sleeveless undershirt. I don't think that is appropriate in the house of God. So by the same reason, I wouldn't want a woman coming in with a halter top into the church, because again, it is disrespectful to the house. And remember, provocative dress then takes your eyes off of the worship, whether it's a man looking at a woman or it's a woman now looking at a man. So the rules that apply for women are the same rules that apply for women, is to be respectful in the house of God.
That just bring up another question we received on a recent live stream, specifically why the women in the choir or the chanters do not cover their head. Is there a reason why they're first of all, is there an expectation in some Orthodox churches for there to be head coverings? And if there is that expectation, if it does exist, why isn't that something that we see practiced as often?
So normally you will see for women, you'll see that a head covering is preferred in the monasteries. Certainly in the Russian tradition, what? Preferred, it's mandatory. It's preferred in the Russian and the Antiochian traditions, but it's not mandatory in the Greek Orthodox tradition. I believe, and again, Terry is going to check this out for me, but we have the words of St. Paul, who talk about now respectability in the church, and he makes commentary about women excess makeup, the way they adorn themselves, hairstyles, things like that. So he makes some comments about men. But again, we have to read each one of these within the context of the time, and not take values from there and just immediately and directly overlay them on top of what's happening today. So there is some biblical inference there about how women should adorn themselves in church. But here in America, we have our casual nature allows us to somewhat relax some of those standards. Meaning, suit and tie is not required for men, and a dress is not required for women. Pants is fine. Pants are fine.
Cornelius Christian has a question. He says, "Hello, Father. Thank you for answering questions. What hope do you see for union with our Oriental Orthodox brethren?"
We actually did talk about that on the last show, and there is certainly reconciliation there. And in fact, I know that I'm going to pop off the screen here for just a second, but there was, I'm trying to recall now, by the dean of St. Vladimir's School, where he talked about the reunification efforts, and that there is still some outlying difficulties with some more complex theological ideas. But in the end, he said, we are all Orthodox. And in that orthodoxy, we can find common ground. So he's saying we start by who we are together, which is Orthodox. And then from there, we will continue that dialogue. And certainly through the bishops' councils that we have at Holy Cross Seminary, together with the dialogue that we have at St. Vladimir's Seminary, there has been many great strides, both with the Orthodox and Catholic Church, and also then with the Oriental and Coptic churches. Yes, I do see that coming, but I think the first order of business is always to get your own house in order before you go visit your friends.
Before we continue, I should point out that due to the weather, I know that we've had a bit of buffering. If for any reason the stream gets cut off, we have the full recording, which we can post again later. I apologize if anybody's having any issues. But while we're on the topic of Asian Orthodoxy, you've had an experience. You've been to Japan, and you've experienced an Orthodox church in Japan. Is that correct? Korean.
Yeah, and Oriental church, I think Oriental Orthodox, we're not necessarily just talking about Asia. And again, Terry is checking me on this. But yes, certainly, certainly we have a presence in Hong Kong. In fact, the current Archbishop of Thegatira, which is the United Kingdom, why can't I remember his name? He's a classmate of mine from Tarpon. We went to Tarpon High School together at the same time. He was the Archbishop for Hong Kong and all of Asia. And so we have a presence there, not necessarily in China anymore, but we certainly have with those countries. I don't know, I'm not sure about Japan, but for sure I know Hong Kong and Korea. And those services there were conducted in the native language with Greek also. So it was very interesting to attend services there and see the gospel book, Korean on one side, and then to see it on English on the other side. But in that sense, those were GOA parishes. Those were, well, not GOA. I'm sorry, not GOA. But they were Greek Orthodox churches, but not in the Oriental Orthodox that we're talking about in the context of the question. So there's no controversy there with those churches.
With the issues in happening right now in Hong Kong, do you see any potential dispute coming in the future with an Orthodoxy presence in China?
Well, as the, I would say, and again, having visited China on a number of occasions and attended Catholic services there several times, I was I never felt pressure. I obviously I didn't go up and receive communion, but when I attended the services, nobody questioned me. There was a very, very good attendance. We're not talking about 20 people. I mean, there were hundreds of people in these Catholic churches. So I did not see the government of China restricting that. Now I know that there are underground Catholic churches because they speak out against the human rights violations that are occurring in China, and so they do it in a very forceful way. We would have the same issues here. We have those same humanitarian issues here in the United States, and we have to some extent we have sometimes the same kind of reaction there. So I know that there are certain underground churches that are very, very vocal, that are not popular with the government and have gone through some scrutiny there. But I never encountered that when I went to Catholic churches in China. So long answer to Demos, what you were saying is that I don't see that even if China were to then exercise control over that should not affect the operation of the Orthodox churches or the Catholic churches in Hong Kong.
Fascinating. On a similar vein, I guess, John A has a question, and we addressed this to a degree last week, but maybe we can sum it up real fast again for John. What's your reaction to the Pope's affirmation of gay marriage?
Well, as I mentioned last week, he is certainly throwing down the gauntlet. We have to be very, very clear. The Pope is not speaking ex cathedra. So what I mean by that is that he is not making a dogmatic statement. He is making a personal opinion, all right? And so we many times have clergy of any rank of making their personal statement. Pope Francis is known throughout his clerical history to be somewhat left-leaning in terms of and more liberal in his views, and he's expressing that opinion. The Catholic Church on a whole has not accepted that, and certainly the Orthodox Church at this time is not accepting of that particular stance. But what is important, and I mentioned this last week, what is important is that Pope Francis is challenging us to deal with the problem rather than stick our heads in the sand and pretend that these things do not exist. Society is evolving, and whether we like it or not, it's going to evolve. And we have to be prepared to offer up a 21st century answer. That answer doesn't mean that we do whatever society tells us to do. That's not what I'm talking about. But we cannot use, 10th century, a 10th century perspective to make 21st century decisions, or to use those methods to engage now with where society is right now. So I think that it's a very good thing that the Pope has made these statements and forced the Church, capital C, to look at herself and to say, okay, what is our answer to these people? Again, it doesn't mean that they have to like the answer, but we have to prepare a logical answer that makes sense to who it is that we are pastoring. And I just don't think that we have not done a good job of that in the past. We have sidestepped it and left it in the and left our heads in the sand. And if one of our congregation members has a gay child, we just don't mention it and we don't say anything. So I mean, if we, the church, are going to be relevant, then that's what we need to be. Is we need to be relevant and to be able to speak to everybody who now to speak to everybody. Jesus Christ was very clear. He said, "Go and baptize all nations and teach them to observe what I have commanded." He didn't say just go to the Greeks or just go to those who aren't gay or just go to those who aren't transgender. He said all nations, and that's the responsibility that we have.
There's a second part to John's question. Do you feel that the Orthodox and other Christian churches are losing the original message and teachings from Christ in order to be more accepted by today's society?
Are losing? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Do you feel that the Orthodox and Christian churches are losing the original messages and teachings from Christ, specifically so they can conform to today's society?
No, I do not. And as you know that if you that book that I showed last week about towards an Orthodox social ethos that I had in there. Can I get that? I just wanted to, that book that I showed last week, Toward a Orthodox Social Ethos, where he talks about that, and again with the backing of and the agreement of the Ecumenical Patriarchate, who talks about and rails against those who would maintain the Orthodox Church as a museum of stone. And he condemns that and says that that is how the church loses relevance when they adhere to unyieldingly to these standards that no longer apply. And as I said, the church does not make decisions quickly. That is one of the major problems that we see today, is that society demands that things be solved in weeks, never more than months. And the church has never made those decisions quickly, because we've seen the ramifications of that. The Orthodox Church did not feel that Vatican II was done in the proper way. The church feels that that was an accelerated move, which has now had consequences 20, 30, 40 years later because of the rush to move forward from Vatican I. So, but that does not mean that we stay and remain stagnant in the world. So there are many times those ultra-Orthodox who will cling with a claw-like grip to this museum idea of what they think Orthodoxy is. And that drives a wedge now with those of us who are trying to reach all of God's people. But does the church need to evolve in certain things? Of course she does. But are there certain things that she has to remain true to? Of course. That process takes time. It takes debate. It's not a single person decision. And those decisions happen over the course of years and decades. But that is, here in America, that's not what people want to hear. And the church gets condemned for that, rightfully so. Meaning that, in an American idea, you should move faster than that. But the church has to move at her own speed to make sure that what she is doing does not sacrifice the principles of what Christ has taught.
Now, John has a few follow-up questions, but we're going to get to them in just a moment. I have to point this out. We got a comment from Damian Culp. He says, "Father bless, hello from Japan."
Oh, hey. So is there an Orthodox church in Japan? That's what I want to hear.
He says Japan is an autonomous jurisdiction of the Russian church. Our liturgies are all in Japanese.
Wow. Okay. Is he? Unfortunately, I don't have. When I was with General Motors, I did not have the chance to spend too much time in Japan. So I'm curious. Is that in Tokyo?
It doesn't say, but when he jumps back, if he jumps back in, we'll find out.
Okay, great. So good. So I thought that there was a presence there, but I didn't think that it was a Greek Orthodox presence. Okay, but Orthodoxy is Orthodoxy. I love it. That's awesome.
It would be fascinating to see a Japanese Orthodox church by way of the Russian church. That would be. I almost want to go to Japan just so I can photograph that.
So, and when I was in Japan, I did have the chance to experience I do believe that it was I'm going to say a Buddhist service. I don't think it was a Tao service. I think it was a Buddhist service. And the elements in that Tao service were very reminiscent of an Orthodox liturgy. And that really told me, when I saw that told me that Christ permeates everything. Because why would that be there? That's there because Christianity is in all and for all.
Trench has a question. He says, Yasu, what are your thoughts on Russian Orthodox Church, the Moscow Patriarchate? Okay. Unilaterally severed full communion with the Ecumenical Patriarch of Constantinople. Don't they set a bad example?
Again, I get, and I'm going to get myself in trouble because, I am. It is very dangerous for me to speak on, as we've learned through this live chat. It's very dangerous for me to speak on the politics and the church politics of other countries. I know that there is on certain issues there is tension between the patriarchates of Moscow and the ecumenical patriarchate in Constantinople. So I want to steer clear of that because I am not informed enough to make to provide an answer that would be grounded in deep political understanding. Just as I would not want somebody Russian or Chinese or South American to tell and explain to me how life should be in America.
Damien says he's in Miyagi, just north of Sendai, and that their priests stream all of their services.
That's good, right?
Yeah. I mean, it'd be an interesting way to check out an Orthodox service in a completely different style.
Oh, so for Japan, you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah. So in fact, if now, and what's the gentleman's name?
Damien. Damien.
So, and Damien, if you can through the chat send us a link. I would, for one of the churches there, I would love to watch that and just see the comparison between our liturgies here and then what's happening there. Knowing how liturgy happens in Korea, and then also seeing liturgies in Greece, and then seeing Orthodox churches in South America too. So I love kind of collecting those comparisons. So if you could send us a link, I would really appreciate that.
He's already on top of it, Father. He says you can search for St. John Orthodox Church Ishinomaki. I'm probably mispronouncing that. And you'll probably find the streams. I'm going to definitely check that out.
Yes, yeah, let's check that out. So we'll copy that down. Thank you, Damien. I appreciate that.
So going back, Thomas Hamilton, his response to John A's questions. He says, "You're right, John. I'm getting a lot of pronunciation challenges tonight. Keep it up. Bergoglio's personal views on this is still troubling, since supporting these illegitimate relationships civilly is still supporting affronts to God. Catholic teaching is clear in that." And it kind of goes back to John, the third part of John's question, which is marriage not between a man and a woman? Are they not united in front of God? The ultimate purpose for marriage is to enter a holy unity and to make offspring. You just said we can't use 10th century standards to our current evolving society. And that is going to be a bit of a brick wall, perhaps, for, let's just say, literalists, and those who are a little bit more open towards the evolution of society and the church's place in said society.
Now, I will make a commentary on one of the things that was brought up there. The Orthodox Church does not believe that the primary reason of marriage is procreation. Procreation is a blessing from God, but the primary reason of marriage in the Orthodox Church is for the salvation of the couple. So each one leads each other to salvation. So it is their sacrificial love to one another united in the bond of holy matrimony. And that is a complete marriage. If that were not true, then our marriage, President Dana and I's marriage, would not be then a holy marriage, right? Because we don't have children. So, so are we to say that those couples that do not have children do not have then a marriage because they have not procreated? The Orthodox Church cannot accept that. So children are a blessing that is offered by God. It's offered to some couples, and then to other couples, it's not, all right? But that does not in any way make the marriage complete. Okay, so this is the beginning of that conversation. And that's what Bishop Kallistos Ware at that about 5-6 years ago, when we had, when he came and he had a dialogue with the priests in the Detroit area, that's how he started that conversation, is that the dialogue must begin with the concept of sacrificial love, okay? Now, that's not to say that it's going to end in same-sex marriage in the church, but it has to start not from procreation, it has to start from love, and sacrificial love for one another.
Thomas is asking for some clarification. He says a Christian orthodoxy is like an anchor. We're rooted, but while anchored, we can move to work with the times we're in. We can't move too far yet. We don't remain stagnant. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. Is that we cannot remain so rooted. You said it well. You cannot remain so rooted that we become out of touch and irrelevant to the time. And I'm trying to think of an example here that So for example, most Jesus Christ spoke more about divorce than he did speak about anything else, and to be married. And here the church allows now marriage to happen again and does not consider it then adultery. So we figured out how to do that. All right, this was not Jesus Christ's intent. He said, that he spoke out against marriage, except, and I think in one of the gospel readings, he gave an exception in the case of adultery. But we've offered in our spiritual court, we've offered now I don't want to say spiritual divorce, but a permission to remarry for things that are not just adultery. In fact, the Archdiocese has published a list of 10 items that are available. This was not always in the beginning of the church. So we have changed that. The fact that women are chanting, that was not in the history of our church. Women didn't chant. The fact that as I mentioned last week, that it clearly states in the canons that you cannot be ordained priest until 35. We've broken that rule thousands of times. So to say that the Orthodox Church does not change is not in touch with the history of who we are. But I think that, again, he said it very, very well, is that we have to be that anchor, but we also have to be able to move. And that's what in the book For the Life of the World Towards a Social Ethos, that's what the point is that we have to always be relevant in the world, not accepting of everything, but to be relevant.
We seem to be having a theme tonight. Teresa says, I don't have a problem with gay marriage, But what happens when they want children, surrogacy, etc.?
And that is, and certainly the church is battling with that. Is that the Orthodox Church feels that the best possible rearing of children happens with a male influence and a female influence. Okay, so this is the same argument that we're going to have with single parenthood. Is that the best case is when a child can have the masculine influence and the feminine influence. Those things go together for the fullness of the development of that child's humanity. And when that situation does not exist, single parenthood, same-sex marriage, is that has to be provided in some way. Okay, and again, I'm very understanding of single parenthood. We understand that, but normally, what I have seen, at least in my parishes, is that spouse, and most of the time it's a single parent woman, she will have a male presence in that child's life. Not necessarily that it's the husband. Okay, it's her husband or boyfriend or anything like that, but it's another member of the family. So that presence comes into play. The difficulty now with same-sex marriage is that how will that influence come? How will that influence be brought about, and how will that fullness of humanity be recognized? So for the church, that's where this discussion is taking place. Is that the fullness of the family, not the rightness, but the fullness of the family unit is central to Orthodox community and Orthodox ethos.
And John does say at the very end here, the message from Christ is clear and should not be watered down to please the new societal norms. But he says, I'm not trying to be rude. I'm Greek Orthodox from Toronto. God bless you guys. Being Christian is definitely an uphill battle. And I personally, I love the fact that we get questions like that, because I think having that conversation, especially conversations like this that a lot of people tend to, there is a bit of a fear to even address these particular topics.
And there shouldn't be. Now, having said all this, the Orthodox Church has to recognize the limitations of who will be Orthodox, and it's for the fact that we are an anchor that we will not reach everybody, because, and especially here in America, is because there is a non-denominational church just down the street that is much more accepting, quote unquote, than we are. And I have lost parishioners in my short time as a priest for those reasons. Father, my husband wants to receive communion, and he's a non-denominational, and you won't let him receive communion. Okay, you have to be Orthodox. You have to subscribe to who we are. No, I just say that as long as you believe in Christ, you can receive communion. So I'm leaving. Or Father, I have to leave the church because you don't allow me to come as I want to come. I want to come in shorts, and I want to come in a t-shirt, and you won't allow that. So I'm going to go to a much more friendly church. So, and I can provide many, many more examples. So we as Orthodox have to understand that you can't have both sides. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Either you are going to be that anchor, but like a parent, be flexible and relevant, or you're going to be the all-accepting, come as you are, do as you want, and then have a much larger presence in church, but then lose the identity and the values that Christ instilled in us.
And in other words, you will sit there and rust as the anchor that doesn't move.
That doesn't move. We just have to be careful about how far we move. That's really the most difficult issue, and why this takes time is, and the Orthodox Church, because she is the bride, is like our mother. and it demands our patience, and that's unfortunately what Americans are lacking, is the patience to see that our mother has our best interest in heart. And again, not saying that, I'm not saying that, that there are not harsh priests out there or harsh bishops out there. Of course there are. But the capital C church, like our mother, loves us, but also at the same time disciplines us when we are not obedient. And this American spirit of nobody tells me what to do is not Orthodox, and we are going to lose people because of that. And we can't change that. We cannot change that. You must be obedient to the church. That cannot be changed.
In a change of topic, Marmar says, with women able to vote in today's world, there is still a discrepancy in business and life, which makes women receive less pay and lower positions many times, etc. How does God, our biblical views, and our religion place men and women?
Well, easy answer to that is that we are created equally in the image and likeness of God. I go back to that example about the rib, when the creation story again. If you want to believe in Adam and Eve, fine. If you don't want to believe, but if you're not going to believe in Adam and Eve, you have to believe in the purpose of what is being communicated there, and what is being communicated in that chapter is the equality of God's creation. And one of our holy fathers is very clear on that. He's in the Genesis reading, it says, and he took the rib from Adam. He did not take from the top, which meant that woman is superior, and he did not take from the heel so that woman is inferior. He took from the central part, the rib, the side, not the rib. Okay, she's right. It says side. He took from the side, meaning that we are equal. Anything that speaks against that inequality is unorthodox.
Zenjin chimes in asking, and I believe this is something we've covered before, but it's actually kind of appropriate being that Halloween is on Saturday. Are Toll Houses real? Because it feels like it gives demons too much power.
We have to remember now that a toll house is a toll house is not a universally accepted Orthodox concept. There is a fringe aspect of Orthodoxy that accepts that, as presented by Father Seraphim Rose. Central what is that? What's that called? Mainline Orthodoxy does not accept nor reject that. So we don't see that as valid, and we see that as taking away from what we should focus on. The church wants us to focus on our life here, on the two great commandments: love the Lord thy God and love your neighbor as I have loved you. Those are the two commandments given to us by Jesus Christ himself. And toll houses and things like that take our minds off of that into other areas that we have no positive or negative ideas of whether that is true. And it smacks a little bit too much of this idea of the scales of judgment, meaning that we weigh you on one side and then we weigh you on the other side, because you've got the demon that talks about all the bad things that you've done, and your guardian angel that speaks about all the good things that you've done. And I've got to agree with the Protestant faith on this, is that smacks too much of works, all right? That you're being judged on your actions. And we certainly know that Christianity is not fair. St. John Chrysostom's sermon at Easter tells us that, when he says, those who have labored the fast throughout the period come and receive, and those who have come at the last hour come and receive the same. that is certainly not justified, and that kind of pisses everybody off because I worked hard for 40 days, and now this jerk comes in at the last second, and he's getting the grace of God equal to mine. Not less, not more, equal to mine. I don't like that.
Well,
I'm not saying I don't like that, but it's very hard to hear those words. So for us, that toll houses, that smacks too much of the works concept.
Well, I think the big question would be if toll houses were real, would they accept Easy Pass?
Yeah, what would the Easy Pass look like? Man, I mean, wow. So, yes. So don't be like a Monopoly game. Do not pass this tall house. Do not collect $200.
I mean, it depends what you do with free parking.
Yeah, you'd have to park. That would be purgatory, right? You know, the gate doesn't go up, and you have to stay there and purge yourself of your sins.
Pablo Henriksen says something which is kind of interesting. They kicked me out from a Pentecostal church because they told me I would go to hell because of becoming a police officer. No wonder why people don't want anything to do with Christianity, according to Pablo. What are your thoughts on that? I've never heard of it being considered a sin to be a police officer, but then nowadays, the police officers, the very concept of them can be politically charged. What do you think about this?
It's beyond ridiculous. I mean, a police officer is a paramilitary side of the military. I mean, that is tantamount to saying that you're going to hell because you're serving in the military. I mean, that is now. Should you be condemned for actions that are inappropriate to your office? Of course. Just as in the military, is that we were told very, very clearly that we were allowed to disobey unlawful or unethical orders. Okay, we were not given that Nazi right of was it Hess? And
Rudolf Hess.
Rudolf Hess, and that who used and also was it Goering, who used that defense at the Nuremberg trials. Well, that's what I was taught, and I was obeying my superiors above me. Absolutely not. The military is very, very clear. At least when I was in, and it stands today, that they said that you are a thinking person, and if you are given an order that is illegal or unethical, you are duty bound to not obey that order. Same thing in the police force. Those are all thinking people, and to hide behind, I couldn't speak up, or I didn't, I was scared of my commanding officer. That it doesn't go in the military, and it doesn't go for paramilitary either. But to refuse somebody for serving their community is just the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. I can't even fathom that. So,
well, one thing is for certain: if you speak Greek, Hess is an unfortunate last name.
Yes, Hess is. Yeah, that's right. Yes, very good, Demas. Like that.
Oh, thank you. XYXXYX asks one last question about toll houses. What about the saints who believed in toll houses? Are there Orthodox saints that believed in the toll house concept?
Okay, real quick to the last person about the police. Don't let that stand in your way. Don't take that as representative of all Christianity. And if you want to be a police officer, absolutely 100% pursue that and be that light stand that Jesus talks about, and be that example for people. So I need to close that out because
beautiful.
You need to be supported and applauded for wanting to help your community. Okay, now saints that believed in the
toll houses.
Toll house concept. Actually, I have to take that down as a research question because I was under the impression that was something that was of fairly recent origin. So I want to research that and find out if there is some history behind that Father Seraphim Rose got that from. St. Theodora? All right, so I'll do some research on that. We'll have to get back to that. So I can speak a little bit more professionally about that.
Now we're approaching the end of our time, but I'm going to try to get through at least a few more questions before we close for this week. Zenjin says, my friends think that the smells and bells style of Orthodox worship is Mosaic law that should be discarded. How can I prove that Orthodox worship is biblical?
Well, there is, I'm trying to think of, there is a great book. I will have it for you. I will give it to Demos so that he can post that on our next Thursday show. Wonderful, wonderful book by Father, I think it's Father George Hatziyordiu. And he takes you through the entire liturgy and shows you the biblical passages for everything that we say and everything that we do. It's exactly the book that you need, that shows you, why do we sense? It comes from Isaiah, and it says, "In my prayers rise as incense," and so it shows you each and every word that we use, where it came from, and then why we do it, and then how it's biblically traced.
Thomas Hamilton is asking for some clarification. When you mentioned focusing too much on works, is that saying being so focused on orthodoxy, we worship the worship and liturgy rather than God, our works for making us like God?
We can worship the worship. I get that. And I've got an example for that. I'm not going to call it a good example, but I'm going to give an example. I have known a couple of priests that are very, 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 very Orthodox, and during Holy Week, there is nothing that they leave out, and not that you shouldn't. And those services, especially the Thursday night service, the reading of the 12 Gospels, that growing up, that service was 5 hours, and so
without pews.
What?
Without pews.
Well, it was Tarpon Springs, so we did have pews. But my parents they refused to go to that service because they were not going to sit through 5 hours of service. All right. So it wasn't until I went to seminary and I actually heard those Gospels read in a manner that reached into my soul, and I got it. And now Thursday next to obviously Easter, the Paschal service, is the most beautiful service for me, because that is the recounting of his passion. I mean, and I love Thursday. I mean, but what I learned, because of what happened to me growing up, is that I do get pretty quickly to the Gospels so that people can hear the Gospels. If I were to do the entire service, it would be then, 4 to 5 hours. And as Jesus says, was the Sabbath made for man, or man made for the Sabbath? So is it better for me to be in a church with 5 people where the entire service is done? Or is it better the way that I had it, and I speak more for Flint because I've had more time there, that for my Thursday service, I would have 50 or 60 people there who wanted to hear that gospel, but weren't willing to spend that amount of time. So here's another area where the church is an anchor, but we are flexible, because they receive those words. and they loved that part of the service. Same thing with the divine liturgy on Paschal evening. I don't ever remember getting home until 5 o'clock in the morning for that Paschal service. And I'm picking on Holy Week here, but and trying to answer the question. And so there are things that I have left out, but now I have 100 people at Flint that stayed for the divine liturgy after then the Paschal Orthros. And I thought that was a beautiful thing to see them there and have the service end at 1:30 in the morning.
John A says, thank you for donating your time to answer our questions.
Thank you.
And in those respects, we're getting a lot of questions in. We're not going to be able to get to them tonight, but I'll try to mark them for the beginning of next week's show. Being, once again, that the holiday is this weekend, this is a question that we answered last week, but I think it bears a little bit of repeating. What is the view, this is from Costa 5, or Costa V, what is the view of the church on Halloween, and is celebrating Halloween wrong?
So, celebrating Halloween, as with every Orthodox answer to anything, it's always it depends. That is the answer to every question. Marissa knows that. Demos knows that. President knows that. And so, at its base, there is nothing wrong with celebrating Halloween with your kids. In fact, we had a question last week: can I carve pumpkins with my kids? Absolutely, you can do that. All right. But when you take the concepts of Hallows Eve to yourself and you worship those ideals, then yes, absolutely, the church's position is Halloween is bad. But if you are carving pumpkins with your kids and you are sharing family time and you're going out and collecting candy and you're letting your kids dress up and you go to a harvest party, what we used to call a harvest party, and all the kids are getting together, that's a beautiful thing, and that's exactly what the church has done. She has taken a pagan holiday and shown it in the light of Christ. That's the same thing that you do with Halloween, is that it's about community. It's not about demonic forces and witches and warlocks. And so, at least in Flint, what we did was we restricted the costumes. We didn't allow devil's costumes. We didn't allow provocative costumes. We didn't allow witch costumes. So we tried to keep them with Disney characters. We tried to keep them with princesses and kings and things that policemen, firemen, things that kids could, professional kids could
something positive.
Something positive. Thank you. So no, there's nothing wrong with that as long as there is not worship attached to it.
I do want to end with this one question because it will end us on a very nice note. Thomas, by the way, your question about the miracle of fire I find to be very interesting. I believe that's going to be a longer conversation, so we're going to address that first thing next week. But okay. Pablo Henriksen has a question. Is Orthodox the true faith? I have felt attraction to it lately. I'm also tired and confused of all the denominations there are today. So, the Orthodox Church will never say that we are the right faith. That is not Orthodox policy. What Orthodox policy is that we are the fullness of the faith. When you make a statement that says you are the right faith, then what you are saying to every other faith is that you are the wrong faith, all right? The Orthodox Church understands herself as the fullness of the faith. That means that every other faith has an element of Christianity, but not the fullness of the faith. It is improper to say that Judaism is the wrong faith. That is improper. But what the Orthodox will say, and again, it doesn't sound politically correct, but they will say that Judaism is not the fullness of the faith because of not recognizing now Trinitarian ideal and the work of the Holy Spirit and then the work of Jesus Christ. So same thing with Islam, the same thing with Buddhism, the same thing with Taoism.
is that there are elements that are there, but their fullness is captured then in Orthodoxy. And so I think that's the way to answer that the church would answer that.
As a closing comment, I know there are a lot of people in the United States in particular that are concerned about the outcome next week. Without taking a political edge, do you have any words of any positive or optimistic words for next week for those that are worried?
Oh, yeah. Number one, be part of the solution and not part of the problem. Go out and vote. Okay, you have an obligation to vote. Those who say that I'm not going to be part of the process, the Orthodox Church would reject that, just as they reject people who say that, Father, I want to attend the liturgy, but I don't want to be part of coffee hour, part of the church, and get involved in the politics. That is not who the church is. So either you're in or you're out. All right, and the Orthodox Church supports now the right and the responsibility to participate in the democratic process. So that's number one. And then number two, again, the world has survived all kinds of leaders. And the beauty of America is that if it's not the right decision, then in 4 years we can try again. Right? Regardless of who wins, if we don't like it, it only lasts for 4 years, and then we can move on and try this again.
Build up locally is what I always say.
What's that?
Build up locally.
Build up locally. Yes, grassroots.
Now, unfortunately, we've gone about 25 minutes over our normal episode length. We're still getting a lot of questions in, so once again, we'll try to make a list and address as many as we can. Thankfully, we're getting to the point where we're getting so many people from all different parts of the world joining our show. We can't get to every single question, but I wanted to thank personally everybody for taking the time and tuning in and asking some amazing questions. Father, thank you again for, despite your trip down to Florida, that you're taking the time to do this. And once again, we're going to have a live stream this Sunday. Despite the fact that Father will be under quarantine, we have a live stream prepared as we addressed at the beginning of this episode. We're going to have a brand new, already pre-recorded epistle, gospel, and more virtual Sunday school videos. I look forward to seeing you all there. Father, any closing words for us?
Yes, I do. I would be remiss if I didn't encourage everybody, if those who are local and those who want to fly in, Philoptochos is having their bake sale. I thought it was on the 22nd. I'm reading here 18th. For some reason, I thought it was the 22nd of November. But if you go to our website and you go to the Philoptochos page, you will see the flyer on there. You can pre-order from us. Unfortunately, we're only able to do takeouts, but the ladies have been working hard preparing some delicious treats. So in anticipation for those Christmas orders. So please go to our website, download the order form, order something from us. It'll also be on the front under the events page or under Philoptochos. So please help support our Philoptochos for all the good work that they do.
Perfect. And with that said, I want to wish everybody a fantastic evening, and we'll be back next week, Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time.
All right.